was just curious to know what's the youngest child who has played with Makey Makey?
I don't actually know because it happened in the wild, but I mean, my son plays around with it, but I don't think that he's made anything with it. Anne-Marie Thomas, who gave that TED talk about squishy circuits with the Play-Doh, she's quoted in the BBC article saying that her 4-year-old puts together banana pianos. But I really, I think it's really not about getting 4-year-olds to use it, I don't think. It's really just like the kind of beginning cognitive thinker, but I guess maybe 4, I don't know.
And my main question is just prototyping stuff now, just for the Makey Makey. Are you gonna have any plans for a wireless unit at some point?
We were workshopping this before it was public at TEI conference, and Kate Hartman, kind of one of the queens out there of wireless, said, you have to put a wireless module on this. And one of the engineers at SparkFun, Jim Lindblom, prototyped one. I would like to do that. Right now, I don't want to do anything extra, but soon, I would like to do something like that.
Right, you want to limit your variables. And my other question is can
maybe you should make one and sell it.
Oh yeah, with all my free time. But as just a question I haven't seen on your forums, if you press a key, or a banana, can you do repetitive press instead of just pressing it constantly 1, 2, Sorry, I'm lacking.
No, that's okay. So
terms.
What are you asking? Like, can you push 2 at a time?
Can you just push, or even push, like say if you want to do macros and you have to do like Control A for some purpose.
Yes.
Is there a way to do 2 keys?
So this works exactly the same as a keyboard. Your computer thinks it's a keyboard. Okay. So, and there's no control button on here by default, but you can add that in using the Arduino IDE by opening up our sketch and modifying the settings. There's a special settings file that makes it easy to do. And all this does is report which keys are down and which keys are up at any given moment, 100 times a second. And so the operating system will respond the same way it would respond to a keyboard.
Okay, so if you held down a key.
Yeah, someone says, why does it auto-repeat? I'm like, well, we just tell the computer the key's down, and that program likes to auto-repeat, so it auto-repeats. So the Makey Makey doesn't think about any of that.
Gotcha.
We try to make the stupidest things we can. All this does is tell what keys are up and down.
And as far as the mouse controls, I know you could go up and down diagonally, like you just hit 2 keys, or.
Yeah, if you hit 2, it does do diagonal. We just did that in software.
Gotcha. All right, wonderful.
When you were wandering around the world doing your workshops, did you, other than the sort of local materials, did you notice differences in the ways that people saw the world in different cultures and the way that they sort of approached?
People ask me that all the time, like almost every time. And I don't know, I don't have an answer, but I definitely saw a difference in the way different people, like between people, that different people approached those materials. And I can just say that some people don't want to engage at all, other people want to get messy, and then some people, over the course of a workshop, or in some case, when I was at a camp in India over the course of 2 weeks, went from not wanting to touch anything to being the leader of touching things. So I guess between people, it must exist between cultures. I don't know, maybe I don't have the eyes to see it.
So this might be a stupid question, but in terms of
Please.
operating system, I mean, can you plug it into anything? Have you plugged it into like mobile phones and stuff like that?
So if it responds to human interface device protocol, which is what kind of like USB keyboards and USB mice use, then you can plug it into that device, assuming that it has this type of USB plug, USB-A. Then this just speaks HID, human interface device. So it does work with some Android tablets that respond to that. It doesn't work with iOS because it doesn't respond to that, although there is a lab out there, sorry, I forget their name, that is just about to release a converter for iOS from Makey Makey specifically. But it has to respond to HID. All this does is talk HID.
Does it work if you plug more than one of them into your computer?
If you plug what?
More than one of them in.
Yeah, we've tested up to 3, and you'd think we would have tested 7 by now, but like we're just doing other stuff, so we didn't. But it should be as many as a computer can handle, as many HID devices as a computer can handle. But we tested 3. That gives you 3 times 18, what's that, like 54? Different keys that you can hook up, and we think you can get up to 80, but we didn't test it.
Oh, hi. I'm also in the medical field, and I was wondering if it could be used for pain response or pain monitoring, somehow hooking that up there. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that would be interesting to test, and maybe if we modify the settings a little, then we could, instead of just being a binary switch, we could detect that high resistance sweat beads that come out of skin, and maybe with some firmware modifications. I guess you can find out.
How do you deal with noise, and are the programs you're using to do that user modifiable?
What was the last few?
Are the programs you're using to deal with the noise user modifiable?
Oh, yeah. So there's just firmware on, so Makey is built on top of the Arduino platform. So there's an Arduino bootloader on here, and then we put a sketch on that. In that sketch, which is the firmware where the noise cancellation happens, that's totally modifiable in the Arduino IDE. The way we're dealing with it is we're actually keeping a running tally of a window of about 20 samples over the exact wavelength of a 60 hertz sine wave, and we're actually doing 55 hertz now because we want it to work in Europe and the US, so we went right in the middle, and we're averaging over one wavelength, and then we're actually just doing binary math. We're adding up 20 ones, or however many ones there are and however many zeros there are, and it's basically a low-pass filter that's specifically tuned to the kind of noise you find in almost every environment, which is 50 and 60 hertz. I'm happy to show you like the MATLAB graphs. We simulated it first. I couldn't believe we simulated the noise. We came up with a solution, actually worked in the physical world. I never thought that was possible.
You talked about the Arduino being a means to get into it. Is the HID interface part of the Arduino code, or is it external to that? Because I've been on the forums talking about getting it to work with an iPad, and I think the power issue could be solved by plugging in an external power source or a battery-powered charger or something like that. But it's identifying itself as a mouse as well that iOS is barfing on. And so I was wondering if there's any way to disable that part of the HID profile.
Disable the mouse part?
Yeah.
That's a good question. That might be a question for the Arduino forums. What's happening, though, is that the Atmega 32U4 that the new Arduino Leonardo runs on has USB built into it and makes it very easy for Arduino's, their API to talk HID. And so that's built into Arduino's basic API now. And so we call their functions and use their stuff. Now, whether or not you can say, I'm not a mouse, I'm only a keyboard, actually don't know.
So the way I was thinking to use Makey is like a virtual keyboard. So when I log into a financial website from a new computer, I can use it as a virtual keyboard so that somebody cannot track my keystrokes. So can Makey be used so as each key on the keyboard can be identified as a different key by Makey? Is it possible?
So you want to circumvent keyloggers for secure logins to a website?
Yep.
You can, on one Makey, you can program to use up to 18 keys. If you want more keys than that, you need more Makeys. Or you could roll your own with a different Atmega that has more digital pins on it, or use a multiplexer. But yeah, up to 18. Hopefully your password's not too complicated.
Hey, so we've talked about the technical part. Now, on the other side, inspiration. Where does it come from? Where do you draw from to get these ideas, and how do you work them?
Thanks. That's the most beautiful part. Really, like the story I was telling is not just it's only one version of the inspiration, but really all that stuff started my eyes were really closed to a lot of stuff. Especially when I was younger, especially after watching a lot of regular TV and listening to what people thought I should be or what I should do. And a lot of different things happened to me. One was like a nature walk with this 19-year-old nature guide, and he told me to look in the mud and see what I could see. And I couldn't see anything, so I thought he was tricking me, and he comes back and he shows me, and it's like a footprint right in front of my face. There's things all over the place that I can't see all the time. That kind of stuff really inspires me, and not just what I don't see that's there, but what I don't see that could be manifested or made with my hands. This kind of idea that you don't vote in a voting booth to change the world. You vote by taking your hands, changing the world. Everybody does that at the same time. Then we live in a diverse, decentralized, like the way nature works. Like trees make the leaves that they make, and the squirrels gather the nuts that they gather. And we're all like working at the same time. It's totally beautiful. So I'm inspired by this idea of getting people to vote, but not by proxy, just actually take action. And so I love to do that. And so since I love to do it, I guess I shine the light that I feel is the brightest in me.
Okay, so I got a question for you.
Okay.
So we were talking earlier, and I just love your philosophy on prototyping. So could you just share that with the audience?
Okay, so I guess we were talking about, I just started a job as a maker research scientist at Intel Labs, and there's a couple things they wanted me to do, and one of them is bringing in a new prototyping culture. And so I guess there's just this idea, which really I just learned over the last 8 years by working with the people at Media Lab, that in order to prototype something, you don't have a designer think of how it should work, and then, I guess in the worst case, you contract out an engineer, and then like 3 months later, you have the first working prototype, and it's not how you want it, and you start using it, and it doesn't feel like the interaction that you kind of imagined it would, or maybe it's different from how you thought, and now you want to make a change, and meanwhile, like months or years are going by, you really want to manifest an interactive system in minutes, or as soon as possible in an hour, really not a good one, a really terrible one that barely does anything recognizable as interaction, and then see how it feels, because you want to have that emotional connection and like kind of intimate experience of holding it in your hands, bouncing it off of people. You should be testing these not in a lab, you should be testing it at a party, test it at the park, bring it with you, wear it, make it part of your life, really kind of like, and get as fast as you can to a solution, and even if it's terrible, and then try it, and then start again. And you need to have like 100 iterations or 10 iterations before you get to final product anyways. So it's kind of bottom up and top down at the same time. So you really need tools or fluency, and not everybody has fluency with lots of different tools. It takes time. So kind of like getting the right tools in the right place and letting people iterate and finish fast.
What's the coolest thing that anyone's ever used a Makey Makey to do?
Yeah, that's kind of like a reporter asked me the other day, hey, Mitch Altman is the ultimate maker, right? So should people try to be like Mitch Altman? And I was like, actually, if Mitch Altman were the ultimate maker, which there is no ultimate because really everyone is that person, then you should not try to be like him, try to be like yourself. So my answer to your question is that everything that everyone makes is just awesome in a different way. I just don't know what the awesomest thing that somebody made. It's yet to be made, possibly by you.